Guys, welcome back to Serial at Midnight. My name is Heath Holland, and I am thrilled to be joined by the filmmaker behind Daytime Revolution, Erik Nelson. Erik, welcome to Serial at Midnight.
Great to be here. See, we have a combined library here of DVDs and books.
Yeah, I have a few. I have just a few. Yeah, I wish we if I'm zooming in now, I'm looking over your shoulder. I'm like, what? It's like a library card over there.
Yeah, yeah. I wish I had another one now. I'm filling them
Well, yeah,
up.
you just roll one in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was telling you before we hit record that I love this film. I'm interested. You make movies about you make films, documentaries about I mean, it's really serious, weighty topics, things with social and political relevancy. I'm thinking of Ford at Pearl, World War II connections here. Ford at Pearl, Apocalypse 45, The Cold Blue. You did a Gray State, which explores the mysterious death of the political filmmaker David Crowley. JFK, The Final Hours. What is it about this subject matter, John Lennon on the Mike Douglas show for a week, that drew you to this story?
Well, first off, it's profoundly a political show. It's a film about politics. It's a film about the politics of the counterculture being injected into the mainstream with the wonders of archive footage. And one specialty of my projects is they almost all revolve around found archive. Gray State, the guy who killed his family documented everything leading up to it. So that became a subject of that particular film. Cold Blue was William Wyler's outtakes from the Memphis Belle. Apocalypse 45, just raw footage we found in color of World War II. Ford at Pearl, footage that John Ford filmed in 35 millimeter color at Pearl Harbor after the attack. And these archive 5 shows that have passed through time in relatively good shape from 1972 and that were preserved. And, maybe the archive film that started everything off was Grizzly Man, which I produced, which was all revolved around Timothy Treadwell's footage. So there's a commonality there, but every film is different and every film has its own purpose.
It seems so relevant to today. It seems almost made for the
Well, that's
parallels
why we
between.
made it. That's exactly why we made it. It was relevant to today. We released it before the election. I knew the election was going to be cathartic. I knew that what was documented in my film and across these 5 original shows was the culture meeting the counterculture, this handshake across the divide. And I felt and still feel that that's incredibly relevant for today. It's kind of a lifeboat, if you will. You can swim out to the lifeboat of this film and see what America is capable of when they try, when Mike Douglas and his team respected and recognized Yoko and John and gave them the control of the show for a week. And John and Yoko recognized Mike's venue and treated that venue with respect. So you had this amazing convergence of talents and agendas that worked out perfectly.
You illustrate very well the sort of. I'm going to choose my words carefully here. Mike Douglas comes across, his show seems very non-threatening, if you know what I mean. Like you carefully show how he does a cover of Michelle before John comes out.
That well-known John Lennon composition.
Exactly. Yeah. And John's pretty nice about that too. He doesn't
Yeah,
say,
John is nice about everything. You get classic John. John is, I think, other than A Hard Day's Night, it's hard to remember a better John Lennon, the whole package. He was playing great rock and roll. He was funny, lightning quick, witty. He was very serious and penetrating in his political observations. He looked great. He was interacting great with Yoko. I mean, this was a moment, a week, and John changed from week to week. He was a chameleon. This film really captures, this week of shows in this film really captures John at full metal John.
I think one of the things that surprises me about the whole thing is that he never seems, John was acerbic often, and Mike Douglas represents the establishment to a certain degree. And I guess John Lennon knows he knows what show he's going on, but it is the documentary points out that they developed this sort of friendship. They developed this mutual sort of respect for each other. I don't know why that surprises me, but John Lennon didn't seem to suffer fools or he didn't do anything he didn't want to do.
And that's right. But he did want to do this. Yoko,
Yeah.
who put it together, really wanted him to do it. John is an entertainer and a ham bone at heart. He always was an entertainer. You forget the Beatles were as much entertainment geniuses than musical geniuses. When they were coming up, they were doing variety shows with Peter Sellers, and Lennon was in How I Won the War. You know, he was the whole package. So I think the opportunity to kind of do something new and surprising appealed to him. And Mike also was a great translator. Mike sincerely was a great interviewer and got John to go places where John usually didn't go in interviews. And Mike did it very sensitively. And you really see across the week the respect growing. And these shows were taped across, I think, 4 or 5 weeks. They would do one a week. So I'm sure John did the first one, and then they talked about it. He and Yoko talked about it. They came back. John got better. And then every week you can see John processing and getting better at what he's doing and the comfort level growing.
And everybody's watching. The statistics from the documentary, Mike Douglas show was seen by 40 million people a week, and 60% of the audience in New York was watching the show. That's a massive audience.
It's a massive audience, and that's why it had a, that's why Yoko and John wanted to do it. They wanted to reach a brand new audience who had not heard the message of the counterculture. And that's what I found so appealing about this. And you say, why make the movie? People talk about Woodstock as the high watermark of the counterculture. And let's face it, that was 400,000 muddy hippies listening to rock and roll. They didn't really resonate beyond that too much. But this was the music, the politics, the art, the conceptual art, all of this expression of the counterculture packaged and dropped into America's living room in the late afternoon for people who'd never been exposed to it before. That's about as far as the 60s got, in my opinion.
Yeah. Do you know if there were any negative consequences for Mike Douglas because of this?
Not for Mike Douglas, but this put the Nixon deportation plan into overdrive. They anticipated this was going to be a problem, and Roger Ailes, who was then working in the Nixon White House, having formerly produced the Mike Douglas show, was watching the show very closely and ran it up the flagpole saying, we don't want somebody who's this effective a communicator subverting the hearts and minds of the silent majority. We better do something and do something fast. And that's just what happened.
There's the theory as well that Roger Ailes was trying to ally John and Yoko with Nixon because he thought they'd be powerful allies.
Well, yeah, it's hard to imagine, but it seems like that's what we've heard.
Roger Ailes being the Fox News.
Well, the guy went on to invent Fox News, speaking of the election, and that also adds an impact and import to these shows. And we wanted to highlight that in the film. I always felt when I made this film, I wasn't in the documentary film business. I was in the transportation business. I just wanted to open up the Wayback Machine, connect us today with 1972, and have that cross-pollination of ideas and influences come back and forth.
The basic issues that are at the forefront of John and Yoko's message here, Mike Douglas says, first episode, he says, what would you like to talk about? John says, love, peace, communication, women's lib, racism, war, prison, drugs, life in general. That's what's going on now.
If anything, we've gone back in time. There's no media platform that can reach that many people as the Mike Douglas show. Americans can't agree on anything anymore. And a lot of it has to do with Roger Ailes and, a business that's basically designed to polarize and makes money the more polarized people are. After, how many years? 30 years of that in the culture, we're going to arrive at a different conclusion. It's ironic that Ailes was an original producer of the Mike Douglas show, which was something that presented this. So all of these sort of, reverberations were the intent of the film. None of this was accidental. I wanted something to inject some optimism and good old 60s, 70s radical enthusiasm into America's bloodstream. And it's ironic, though, a thought I just had was Jerry Rubin is one of the people. That was one of the main people who Yoko and John wanted on the show. And it's the one guest that Mike Douglas was nervous about. the Yippie Manifesto. Imagine if you had told Jerry Rubin walked on the Douglas set and said, hey, we have a president who's vowing to dismantle the FBI and turn the J. Edgar Hoover building into a museum, is going to take over the Department of Defense and fire all the generals, who's going to put a woman in charge of the CIA who's dedicated to dismantling the intelligence state. Rubin would have been overjoyed. It's ironic that the radical agenda is sort of been flipped inside out. But the connection between Jerry Rubin and the Yippies and what's happening right now is explicit now. And I didn't quite connect those dots until this weekend, but they now stand connected.
Well, looking at history and looking at what we've seen, what the film chronicles, where are we going? What do you think is the next step here?
Well, all you can do, as Stanley Kubrick said, that, it's up to us in the darkness to try to supply whatever light we can. Or Bruce Cockburn wrote a great lyric, you have to kick at the darkness until it bleeds daylight. And I wanted this film to channel the energy of John and Yoko and their prescience and their overall kind of optimistic about the human race message and repackage it and put it back out there in its purest form for right now. So all I could do was that, and my work here is done. And if everybody who watches this figures out ways where they can, kick at the darkness so it bleeds daylight in their own lives, we'll move things forward. It's a long haul, but succumbing to nihilism and anger is never a good idea. And just be well informed, and be skeptical, and do what you can to fight back at the darkness.
Well, and Yoko says, I'll quote her. She says, "People are very pessimistic, but we want to show them that the future is beautiful." Did you deal with
Yeah,
Yoko?
Yoko. I did U.S. versus John Lennon. I was the executive producer of that film about, I don't know, however many years ago. And Yoko was nothing but a pleasure to work with, very on top of it and very opinionated, but in a good way, and very careful about her legacy. But that film got done, it came out fine, and Yoko's contributions were great. So I knew that she was someone who I could work with and I wanted to work with again. And she was very supportive from day one. Both she and Sean got the premise and whatever the vision was, and reviewed the film and only gave helpful comments. And really the only big note they gave was they wanted to see more of our original interviews. They really liked the message of the film at the end, where Nader and Nabucco and everybody, all the people who were there in 72, talk to the present day and kind of give an optimistic message. Yoko wanted to see more of them on camera. She really didn't have much to say about she and John. She was just more interested in how we were moving the message forward. And her notes were, I was quite happy to take that on board and make that note, make that addition for her.
Now, I wish you could have also talked to Chuck Berry and George Carlin as well.
Well, Carlin, I would have liked to have talked to. Chuck Berry, I don't think had much to say. It was just a gig. Carlin would have been great because Carlin, I know, treasured doing these shows. He knew these were important, and to be sharing a stage with John and Yoko meant something to him and did for his entire life. And obviously, if you needed somebody to connect the dots between the present day and 1972, Carlin was put on earth to do that. He's certainly sorely missed.
Did you know that you were going to have to do so much restoration work to the original footage?
Yes. Yeah, I knew going in, compared to what we did on the Cold Blue and Apocalypse 45, this was not as difficult. But yes, it took a lot of time to put it up and remove the video hits and restore the audio. Hopefully we did a good enough job so nobody notices that we did a good job. We just didn't want to call attention to it. But if you look at the other versions that were out there and look at what we've done, it's astonishing difference.
Well, and the Blu-ray has a before and after comparison so people can actually see.
Yeah, we put that on because it's important. I want people to see what we did. And the Blu-ray also has uncut musical performances because we chopped up It's Hard for the open of the film, and we used most of Memphis, Tennessee with Chuck Berry, but we showed the whole thing. And John and Yoko performed Luck of the Irish, which just didn't quite fit in the movie. So we put that entire number too. So even extra John and Yoko song in their entirety with the audio restored by Sean's audio team, the same team that restored Mind Games, who they did the audio restoration of all the music. Even Mike Douglas's Michelle ran through their system.
Wow. Do you know if those restorations are going to get any sort of, or if there's been any discussion about these shows being presented full and uncut for
I
people?
certainly hope not. I don't want them out there. If people want to
No?
see them, if people want to see them, they can watch my movie. No, because I'm sure if somebody wants to spend the amount of money we did, what I think we used about 70 minutes maybe of the shows.
Hmm.
There's an additional 7 hours of stuff, and I don't think anyone's going to be able to afford to do what we did or going to want to. I mean, facetious. Obviously, if somebody wants to put them out, good on them. But trust me, we put out the good stuff. We managed to distill the 7.5 hours down to a very potent, uh, and relevant film. But, they're out there, I guess. I mean, I know there's a VHS box set that was released in 1998. I don't think they're out in any form now.
No. That's one of the reasons I'm asking is because it is pop culture history. You got the good stuff. What else didn't make the cut? Were there things that you were on the fence about that you were
Not
like,
really.
fans would love this, but
No, I would have liked to have put, I think they did Johnny Be Good, and one more Chuck Berry duet. If the music rights weren't so problematic, I would have included that in the box set. But,
that's
you
one of the
know,
things I wanted to ask you about was music rights. Did you hit
we
up
cleared
against?
everything. We cleared everything. We cleared everything. And that was, Yoko was very helpful in helping us clear all the Beatles stuff. And we got a very good, they were very helpful. They made the movie happen, uh, as far as making it affordable so we could do it.
That's a blessing because it could have gone another way and it could have been a
Well, it
lot
wouldn't have
harder.
gone if that couldn't have made the movie. So,
Mm,
I would have been a different movie.
yeah.
But the fact we could have Imagine, uncut in that great performance and Yoko songs and It's Hard, that was even Michelle, the Beatles to get publishing and the Beatles music can be a tad expensive.
I wanted to ask you about your aesthetic choice to you sort of do these built-in commercial breaks at these natural points,
Yeah, well, those
uh,
were the commercial breaks. That's where they were.
and you've put it in, and you've got the Daytime Revolution logo. I just
Yeah,
wanted to. I noticed it. I think it's an interesting choice. I like the way that you carry over the spirit of
yeah, that's exactly right. I wanted this to feel like you're watching one of these shows in about the 90 minutes that the original shows were. And when they go to commercial, we go to commercial and we reset and we come back. I wanted to have the feel of a television show, but be a feature-length film. It was fun to play with the structure there. And the admittedly cheesy graphics we did were basically inspired by the original Mike Douglas shows. We didn't want to rip people out of the moment. We wanted to keep people in that world, but at the same time, when we bounce forward to the present day, the interviews are shot 4K. They're shot like documentary makers do. So it was, to me, like there was never any doubt I was going to do that. It just seemed like the way to go.
Was there anything that surprised you as you were making the film? A twist that the production took, or something that you got that you didn't expect to get?
When I sat down after I way deeper into the process than I should have, I really sat down to watch all the 5 episodes, all of them. And here I'd already was pretty much committing to make the project, and I hadn't watched the actual Lennon shows. I assumed they were going to be something worth watching. And what got me and what surprised me was something we've discussed, which was how great John Lennon was and just how good he looked and how focused and into it he was. And then the second thing was how prescient everything was. I kept thinking, my God, if we'd only listened to these people, we'd have been in a much, much better space today. If we listened to some of the things that Bobby Seale was saying, we were listening to some of the things that even crazy Jerry Rubin were saying. The message and a lot of the, John talks to Ralph Nader about the importance of voting and how young people need to commit to vote even if it means moving things a little bit forward. He even uses this gesture. If we can just make it a little better, it's worth voting. Take that quote and apply it to this election.
Well, and the young woman that stands up at I think it's during the credits, the a
Oh,
woman
the
stands up.
last question, yeah, where she talks about what can we
What can
do?
I do? Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the last thing you hear in the film is that great answer from John.
There are going to be people who dismiss this documentary because they perceive it to have an agenda that they do not share. Obviously, we've talked about the division in our society right now, and it's been going on for a long time. And this is the era of like, review bombing and people just really trying to sink any opinion that isn't their own. Um, but one of the things about art is that it brings us together. And I think John and Yoko knew that. And I think that the Mike Douglas show knew that. And the people responsible for that show, lining this all up, knew that. What would you say to someone who wants to villainize this message or who wants to criticize Lennon as being some sort of an irrelevant radical who was too far out there to listen to? How do you reach people that have these walls up? But we've all got walls up to some degree or another. How do we transcend that right now?
Well, all you can do is just put it out there. And if people find their way into it, they find their way into it. As Harlan Ellison used to say, I did a film with Harlan Ellison, you're not entitled to your opinion. You're entitled to your informed opinion.
Is there anyone today that could do this? Is this a moment in time that can never be replicated again? Is that one of the reasons behind the film in the first place? Is like, look what was capable and is not anymore? Or is there,
No, I mean, that history is a moving target. History is a moving target. There'll never be another Beatles. There'll never be another John Lennon. There'll never be another Mike Douglas with that kind of cultural sway. But as I say, kick at the darkness till it bleeds daylight. No one knows what's going to happen. There are so many other, look at Taylor Swift, for God's sakes. Her tour ended last night. That's certainly a message and a quote act of enormous positivity. There's no negativity in her and what she's doing. And not that her endorsement obviously moved any needles, but the point is she's conscious of her cultural weight and whether she's doing explicit politics or not, her entire message of empowerment and sort of peace, love, and goodwill is getting through to people. So, and I think if you pointed out that connection to John Lennon, he would be a Swiftie. I have no doubt about it.
that's a good place to wind us down and to head out on. The documentary is available everywhere digitally, correct? And there's also
Yeah,
the
it's on VOD. You can get it, buy it on Apple, screen it on Apple, Amazon. And physically, though, I'm a big fan of physical media. The Blu-ray looks incredible, and it's got the bonus things. So to me, the Blu-ray is its best form. I mean, it rocked and rolled in theaters, and I'm glad we got it out there. But to me, you know, I've seen it on Blu-ray. It looks better on Blu-ray than it ever did in any theater. So, but
really.
your miles may vary. But the great news is it's out there, Heath. It's in the world. People, people can, as you said, well, what do you think of people who will give it one-star reviews or, photobomb it or do whatever they do? I honestly don't care. It's out in the world. People can have their way with it and make of it what they want. I'm moving on to the next project.
Any hints about what the next project is?
Oh, I know exactly what the next project I'd like it to be, and that's actually the Beatles play a role in that. In May of 1966 in London, if you put a compass point on Big Ben and drew a 100-mile circle around it, this is what was happening in London during the Renaissance of the 60s in this one month. The Beatles are recording Revolver and shooting the first music videos on Revolver, recording that amazing album, making it. Bob Dylan is playing his shows at the Albert Hall, the final electric shows with Blonde on Blonde yet to be released, but the high water mark in so many ways of Bob Dylan. Monty Python meets for the first time. They're all writers together on the David Frost show. Stanley Kubrick is in principal photography of 2001 in London, and Muhammad Ali fights a heavyweight fight in London that one month. And I'm just scratching the surface of what happened. So my film is an argument that London in May of 66 was the epicenter, not just of the 60s, but of Western culture in the last 500 years.
You have my full attention. I
Mhm.
cannot wait to see that. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me
Yeah,
about
my
this.
pleasure.
I highly recommend people check this film out. It is, again, if you have any sort of a bias against, music is medicine, and John and Yoko were saying things that we all feel, but we're being torn in different directions by forces outside of us. I think all of us have this innate humanity inside of us if we would just let it out. And that's
Yep,
what the film really captures that. Let me say goodbye to you off the air, but after we finish recording. But thank you so much for your time. I really
my pleasure.
appreciate it, and this was a blast.
Thank you.